Hey there, so in this particular video I wanted to go over the ForEach method. So the ForEach method is used quite often to sum or log over values in an array and basically just see what's going on. So here I have a simple array and it has 4 values in it, and if you remember basic JavaScript, you know that okay, if I wanted to see the value of an item in my array, I would have to use index notation for the array. And so we know that arrays start at 0, not 1 in computer programming. So this is actually array index of 0. So if I put 0 here and then I console log the value, and we'll go ahead and just hit save, and then I'm using Node.js to run my JavaScript. So I would just type in the name of the file followed by node and press enter. You'll see that I get back 1, which is this current value here. If I wanted to change this and make it maybe array of index 2, so take a moment and think, if you're a newbie, what would that give you? If I type in node index.js one more time, we'll see that, okay, the index of 2 is the value 3, because again, 0, 1, 2, 3. So this last item here is index of 3. So most newbie developers would probably say, okay, I'm just going to create a for loop and I'm going to go ahead and iterate through the array, and basically as long as I'm not at the end of the array, which is what this says here, go ahead and basically add to my for loop, add to my result variable, which is 0 right now, add to my result variable the current value at the index of I, and then go ahead and increment I again. So once this for loop finishes, we're going to console.log and see the results. So we'll save it here and we'll run node index.js once more. We'll see that we get back 10. So yeah, when you add up all these numbers together, you get 10. So far so good, but what happens if you have more arrays to add up or more objects to go through? Would you sit there and create 3 more variables, loops? I suppose you'd have one more array, then one more result, then one more for loop, and then one more console log statement. Just doing this again, let's say that I copied and pasted all of these things here and I changed these values to 22, 33, or 32, 44, right? Already by doing it this way, I'm prone to more error, because now I have to manually say, okay, well, I already have a variable called r above, so maybe this is r2, and then this is result2, and then I have to go in here and look for all the instances of r and update that to r2 as well as r result, and then down here result2, and then save it, and then come back down here and do it one more time, and you can see, okay, I got my value. But now again, somebody's saying, okay, well, great, I'm going to just keep giving you work. Now you got to add up all these different arrays that I gave you. So you'd have like this long thing that obviously would make no sense, right? That's not good programming. Nobody does programming like this unless you're again just starting to learn and you have no better way of knowing what to do. So essentially this is where the for each method actually comes into play, right? Rather than writing a whole bunch of for loops, which can be confusing, you can use the convenience method, which is the for each method that belongs to the array prototype. You can think of prototypes right now in a quick and dirty way as sort of classes. Things like arrays, strings, they all come with built-in methods that you can use to basically do more than just save values. So if I wanted to iterate over all of the values in my array, I could just use this built-in for each method. And I'm going to do a real quick search on my Chrome browser here and just show you what I mean by that. So if I say array for each, and I guess I could also write JavaScript to be a little bit more strict about what my search term is. But yeah, so if you click, if you look at the first link that comes over here, it says array.prototype.forEach. If I click this, you'll see that for each belongs to the array, again, global object, or you can call it a class. And this is a method along with all these other methods that get sent to you, they're available to you that you can use, and all you have to do is just basically call it on your variable anytime you declare a variable to be of type array. So here actually too, we can see a little bit of an example. All right, so I have 3 values in this array, and then if I use the ForEach method, I can go over each element in the array and then console log it. So let's do that here for our particular example. So we're going to say element, and then basically we're going to console log the element. And let's go ahead and save that and run our function once more, and you'll see we get 1, 2, 3, 4. Now one thing to note is that this is ES6 syntax. So if this looks kind of confusing to you, just know that the item on the left is basically your parameter, or when you're defining the function, basically like the thing that goes for your function. And then on the right hand side over here, after the fat arrow function, is what actually gets returned from the function. So if I wrote this function using ES5 syntax, right, the older syntax, and I just said function element, right? Again, element is the thing I want to pass into my function. And then here, if I wrote console log element, you notice that I don't actually have a return statement. And by default, if I don't define a return statement, then it just returns undefined, right? And that's exactly what's going on in that very terse ES6 definition that we saw earlier. But if I go ahead and save this and I run node index.js, you'll still see I get 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's go back and use that same ES6 syntax. And now that we're good with it, we can basically, one more thing I'd like to do is I'd actually like to add to the result variable we already have here. So I'm going to use brackets instead, and that will give me a little bit more wiggle room inside this function to kind of see what's being output to the console. So I want to see the element, and then I also want to add to my current result the value of the element. So we'll save that, and then we'll run node index.js. And so you'll see I get 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll notice that I didn't actually see the result at the end, so I need to type that as well. Okay, so save once more and then run it, and you'll see I get back 10, which is great. Now the cool thing is I didn't have to write a for loop, right? There's no for loop. And if I wanted to make this really, really terse, right, like just really straightforward, really simple, I could just get rid of that extra bracket and then just make it a simple, one-line statement. And so again, if I save this and I hit node index.js, I get back 10. And this is nice because I don't have to have like hundreds of lines of codes of just for loops. I can just write a one-line statement and basically get what I need very quickly. So one more thing before we go. Essentially, you might be wondering, okay, you got this nice convenience method, but how exactly does it work, right? And that might be something that the person interviewing you might want to know too. Like, do you know how to write your own for each method? And I'd say if that were the case, if that's what they're asking you for, it's actually pretty straightforward to do. So I'm going to comment this out here, and then I'm going to create a function called ForEach. And basically what I want to do is I want to take an array, right, just like we use an array here, and then pass in one more parameter called a callback. And we'll talk about that in a second here. But essentially, rather than write a for loop all over the place, everywhere in our code, we're just going to use the for loop one time inside of a function, and then we're going to still loop over and basically look through each item in the array, and then keep doing that for the length of the array. And then basically we can call back our function on each item in the array. So let's say, okay, I have the current value, so let's say array of I, and then I can take the index, right? So let's just pass those two things here. So here I can define another function, and I could say, all right, I want to take the current item and then the index, right? And then basically I want to console log the item and the index, right? So a little confusing here if this is your first time looking at it, but essentially, again, the idea is that we don't run and write a whole bunch of for loops all over the place. We just want to bury that functionality inside a simple function that we can call one time, and that's why we're able to do that here. And so basically, again, inside the loop, we're just iterating over the value, the current value, array of I, and we're also passing in the current index. And so down here we have a anonymous function, and actually I guess we can name it so it has a name. And so we'll say log. And so finally, to use this function that we just described, we'd have to call ForEach and then pass in the array that we want to loop over, followed by the function callback, right? So this is going to be the function callback that we put here, and that's actually going to get run here inside the for loop, you know, every single time we pass through the array. So that's why this method works. It's a little bit more complicated, but for you, the user, you don't really notice that. You just think, oh, it's really convenient. I just call this method. But what you did is you actually buried the for loop underneath the hood inside this particular function. So if we save this, and then if we run it, you'll see that now I can see, all right, here's the item, which is 1. Then here's the index, which is 0. And so on. Here's 2, then 1, then 3, then 2, then 4. So this is the index of 3, index of 2, index of 1, and here's the value. And I could switch these if I wanted, right? I could change the order if I wanted. I could put the index here, and then I could put the current value, and we could take a look and see what that happens over here. So if I type node index one more time, you'll see that now the index is on the left hand side and the value is on the right hand side. So you can customize your own for each function if you want. Just kind of going back to JavaScript MDN, right? If you look at what you have over here, the callback function has the current value, which maps to basically this thing, and then the index, and then you also get back the array as well as the instance of this, which is just the current scope. So if you look at also these like square brackets here, this just means optional value. So you don't actually have to pass it to your callback function. If you wanted, right, if we wanted to come back over to our particular function and just say, okay, make the rest of these optional, then I could just say, all right, in my own custom function here, I don't need index. I'm just going to console log only the item, right? And so I'll also go ahead and add to the result as well. And so if I, and because I guess now that I've changed what I'm doing inside the function, I'm just going to say sum. So I'll go ahead and clear out my console, and then one more time type node index.js. And it looks like I've got a little bit of an error here. Oh, that's because I changed the name of the function, so we need to name sum instead of log. So once more, clear the thing, and then basically there you go, 1, 2, 3, 4. And just so we can see the result, we'll also put the result down here as well. And save it one more time, node index.js, and there you go. You've got 10. So I hope that made sense. If anybody asks you about the ForEach function now, you know exactly how it works, the internals, as well how to use it and why you would use it. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you in another video.